ready, Ken? Yes. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to the March 20th, 2019 Boone County Board meeting. My name is Sherry Gieske. I am the Vice Chairman of this County Board, and I'm sitting in for the Chairman who is away on business. I'd like to, first of all, ask you... Pardon? How can you not hear me? I'm so loud anyhow. I know. You can all hear me, can't you? What? Huh? I'd like to ask you to all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and please stay standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To the Almighty, we urge uniformity in ways and measurements and ask that this body of government provide support and conduct of business relations with the public's best interest. Give our staff and administrators and advocates of a policy of good faith and justice towards all decisions and allow them to remain focused on current and future policy. Bless our military men and women. Please give comfort to those who have had recent tragedy around the world. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jeff.
With a nice prayer.
Can we have a roll call, Julie?
Sherry Gieske.
Here.
Carl Larson.
Here.
Ray Larson.
Here.
Jessica Milner.
Here.
Marshall Newhouse.
Here.
Bernard O'Malley.
Here.
Brad Stark.
Here.
Kathy Ward.
Here.
Carl Johnson is absent. Sherry Bartelt.
Here.
Jeff Carlisle.
Here.
Denny Ellingson.
Here.
Thank you. I'd like to, I'm looking for an approval of the agenda. With the exception, we're taking item 3.1 off the agenda, so it will be amended.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Kathy, seconded by Jeff. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. I'm looking for a voice or for a vote to approve the minutes of the 2019 County Board meeting, please.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Jeff Carlisle, seconded by Brad Stark. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Ken, we have no appointments, correct?
Correct.
So we're now up for public comment. I have one here. Is there another one on the table? No? Sherry Branson. You get 3 minutes, kiddo. Talk fast. Oh. Which of you is Sherry? Which is Sherry? No. I'm kidding. Sherry Branson and John.
I don't know that it's on.
Here, just take this one.
You know, I am technology challenged. I can't even handle the mic. I'm Sherry Branson from 4625 Town Hall Road, Belvidere, Illinois, and this is John Litke from, I know, but the addresses, they put it in the record.
I'm from Monroe Center, Illinois.
All right. Anyway, John and I come up here today because, you know, this whole floaty issue has had a longstanding feud that has gone on for like 14 years now. And Mr. and Litke and I have had the opportunity to discuss the matters before you tonight with great length and with the goal of resolving the conflict between us and the neighbors. We have agreed to disagree on the issue of the extended hours simply because the neighbors don't want them, and Floaty does. We have also made several painful compromises to resolve the conflict between us. Mr. Litke has also carefully reviewed issues concerning chronic complaints and has agreed to make several changes to his operations to lessen the negative impact upon those neighbors. Examples of those changes include the following, and Mr. Litke will instruct the drivers of their front-end loaders to not leave their equipment in reverse when not actively backing up. He will then reroute the trucks so that when they're filling, they don't have to back up what they're filling, and those simple changes will reduce the noise from the backup alarms. Mr. Litke has also agreed to repair the northern berm to reduce the dust that blows off of it, and homeowners will be mailed their pre-blast well inspection reports that we've been trying to get for years. And to improve relations with the neighbors, he has graciously agreed to give their neighbors his personal cell phone number so that they can quickly call him and address their concerns directly. and personally with the intent of trying to get things resolved. He has also agreed to give the neighbors tours of the quarry on April 9th at 3, 4, and 5 p.m. respectively. Each tour will last about an hour, and you'll need to pre-register if you want to go out with us, simply because you can't put more people in the van than the van will allow, or the bus or whatever they're driving. And hopefully this will allow both parties to learn from each other when they get the chance to talk to one another. We stand here before you tonight, hopeful that our efforts to cooperate with each other will end the conflict between us for once and for all. And we also want to personally thank Mr. Lickey for taking the time to work with me on these issues. He has also summarized a list of stuff in a letter that he has given in to Ken that he would like to enter into the record officially tonight. And thank you very much. It's long overdue, isn't it?
Thank you. John, would you want to say anything?
Well, I just wanted to mention that I memorialized some of the things that Sherry had mentioned in her narrative today, and I've passed that on to Ken, and I see that he's distributed that to each of you. So some of them are things that may be a little bit unusual for you to require as a special condition to the permit, so we've agreed to do those voluntarily in addition to it. So,
thank you very much.
You bet.
Thank you, Sherry. Let's see. Reports from community agencies. Council on Aging. Is that you, Mr. Ellingson?
Might be. We had a very good but short meeting Monday night. As I've said several times, I think things are running really quite well as far as getting things done. There's several good programs coming up on health matters. They've got one coming up on working with some others on people without finances, what it's going to be like. And they're going to have a dinner that's going to represent that type of a thing. They've also got I can't say the name of it all of a sudden. Spring is in the air. It's scheduled for the end of next week, if I'm right. Somebody sure can correct me. But if anybody's looking for tickets, let me know. I do have a few. Other than that, things are rolling well.
Now, isn't the Council on Aging looking for a new director, or?
Well, they have been doing that. There's been ads out on it. We actually had a couple of people come to interview the board the other night. In a way, they came and wanted to watch what happened and see if it was the type of an organization they wanted to be part of. So there are 3 people considering and being considered right now.
Good. Any questions for Denny? Pam, I know I saw you. You can't hide. I started my morning out with Pam, and I'm ending my evening with Pam.
We've had these long days, haven't we?
I know. But I get to take a nap in between.
I have to say I didn't. Well, good evening. A few things I want to share with you today. Our enterprise zones, we're starting to pick up on some of the projects that were going, our build-outs with McDonald's and the Poplar Grove Wings and Wheels Museum. We have over $2 million in capital investment since January 1st of 2019. Additional projects that are going to be underway are one with FPM and Fastenal, Planet Fitness should be beginning shortly. Fastenal is a 6,800 square foot location that they're going to build a location on a 1.5, 2 acre lot. They're going to move from their current location in order to expand their footprint, and then they're going to be discussing a further footprint in phase 2, probably in another 5 years. We also had submitted with Project Flower. It's a Canadian manufacturing food processing facility. They're expecting 60 direct new full-time employees. They're talking about a $26.4 million investment for a 200,000 square foot location. So we submitted 2 sites in Belvidere to address that, and we'll keep you up to speed about what is a possibility. We're also working on our website development. That's underway. We should have a design, and a soft launch is expected in May. We are also working a lot, and a lot of people are asking about what's happening and what are the updates with the FCA. Well, our furthest information is there will be approximately just north of 2,000 people that are going to be affected by the layoff. and this includes the FCA as well as suppliers. There are some suppliers that have other customers, and they have indicated that they don't foresee any layoffs. Just to let you know that they have another division that provides the Jeep and manufactures the Jeep in China. They actually export to 100 companies, and by losing some of their business to China, they're going to be actually exporting to these other countries from China. That will be a third of their business. This is a problem that's it's not going to just face the automotive industry, it's going to face all manufacturers who actually do exports. This is really going to be a national problem moving forward. So there's some challenges that we foresee in Illinois as well as at a federal level, and some legislative issues that we may need to be more involved in. So at Growth Dimensions, we're trying to propose maybe some presence on both levels, the state as well as national level, in order to represent the industry in our community. We did help support a hiring event that was held yesterday. Our latest number was over 500 people, job seekers, that attended, which is fabulous. We haven't had those numbers for quite a few years now. About over 50 employers were in attendance, and I had a number of employers calling me today for when's the next event. Some that weren't even present, they just heard about it. There is going to be another event focusing on the FCA closures, probably closer to the spring, the end of the spring, when they're going to be affected. And so we're working with Rock Valley College, the Workforce Connection, and other partners the UAW, in order to make sure that those services are delivered. When I talked about those 2,000 individuals, our workforce comes from a 60-mile radius to address the automotive industry. So we're really talking about that these may be people affected in southern Wisconsin as well as Chicago metro area and our region. We are participating in order to get some new investment. We're participating in Select USA Summit. We're part of Team Illinois. Last year, we participated in this, and it was a high-profile event. About 1,000 investors from other countries participate. And this is a way that we can gain some relationships and some partnerships with the businesses that we have here. We're also going to be participating in what we call Happy Festivus. It's to target brokers and site selectors to this area. We collaborate with a lot of our partners within this region in order to attract brokers and get them to know a little bit more about our community. And last but not least, we have our annual spring reception celebrating 40 years of economic development in our community, and that's going to be April 4th, and we hope you will all attend.
Any questions for Pam? Marshall?
Yeah, for your workforce event, if the employers were calling you asking when the next event was, can a person assume then that there is a general lack of employable people and that they were anxious to make themselves known or to see what's out there? Or do we
Absolutely.
have employable people here that they just hadn't made the connection yet?
For the last 2 years, we've been hearing from businesses that's probably the number one complaint, been able to attain a skilled workforce. So a lot of people, they said that were unemployed probably are just not the right fit for the company. Maybe they weren't employable. Maybe they just didn't have the skill sets. And sometimes it's soft skills or hard skills. It's hard to define. But there has been a lot of opportunities out there in the community, and there's a lot of training dollars that are available for businesses and job seekers alike. So I would say that there are a lot of positions open. I don't think if individuals want to find a job through this right after their layoff, I'm sure it won't be too difficult. That being said, because they're losing their jobs to another country, they may be eligible for additional benefits called TAA and TRA benefits. So this will be like extension or additional benefits for unemployment, and would be additional expenses for training. So some people take advantage of that and choose to change their careers, maybe go for extended training opportunities during that period of time.
Any other questions for Pam? Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Next up is court-appointed special advocate, Casa Charlotte.
Hello, I'm the director of Boone County CASA, and we train volunteers to advocate for abused and neglected children in our community. I'd like to start off by apologizing for not being at the last several county board meetings. We had new advocate training on Wednesday nights, and so that kind of took precedence. So we did swear in a new advocate last week, so we're happy to have her on board. We currently have 20 advocates with 18 having children that they are serving. We are serving 42 children right now. We did get a new baby in the last month, so we are currently serving 42. Let's see what else. I want to thank everybody who came to our 4 Icons show last month. It was a success for everybody who attended, and we're planning on doing something similar to that next year. And we are also looking forward and planning for our Cars for Casa event. It's the third year that we're doing this, and that'll be held on August 24th. So car show, food trucks, DJ, kind of all sorts of stuff. So information on sponsoring that event will be going out here shortly, and then registration for vehicles will also be happening here in the near future. So,
Thank you. Any questions for Shar? Kathy?
I do, and I'm looking at this report, and I do really appreciate all the work your people are doing. Yeah. It's really good to see, and maybe you can explain this to me, why in 2015 we had 88 abused and neglected children on this list, and now we have 42. What do you attribute that to?
Part of the decline in numbers was because some of the cases had been open for quite some time, and so they were closed. Adoptions going through, there was kind of a backlog on that. So part of it is simply cases closing.
Would you like me to jump in,
Yep,
Charlotte?
I'll let you handle
Sure.
this one.
Part of the issue was that we used to be in Boone County, work with DCFS out of Rockford. They then moved us to DeKalb. In addition, there's been changes at DCFS as well as funding and just issues keeping staff there. So they have moved in some direction of doing intact family planning first before referring to court. So despite there being low numbers, I wish I could say that's an indication that child abuse neglect is down in our county. However, based on what we see and what we know of the cases that go to DCFS first for intact family, it's probably a similar number. And what typically happens in intact, if they're not successful, then they get referred to court at that point.
It tends to just delay the inevitable, yeah.
Unfortunately, we've been trying to work with DCFS about that issue with little success.
Any other questions for Charlotte? Thank you, Charlotte. By the way, have no fear. Mr. Carlisle took care of things.
I had no doubts.
I knew.
Yeah.
Thank you. Board of Health, Amanda?
Good evening, members of the County Board and members of the public. I'm Amanda with the Boone County Health Department. Just give a few quick updates with our 12 domains for our public health accreditation process. Domain 1, monitoring health. Currently in the state of Illinois and here in Boone County, we are experiencing widespread influenza activity. We still do have flu shots available, and it is not too late to get a flu shot. Actually, the flu season extends into April, which many people don't realize. So if you need a flu shot, you can come see us at 1204 Logan Avenue. We work with both of our public schools to monitor what we call influenza-like illness. So we monitor school absenteeism to check the rise and fall of each flu season. Domain 2 is diagnose and investigate. We are currently in outbreak status for hepatitis A in the state of Illinois. We are not in outbreak status as of yet in Boone County, but we are monitoring this situation closely. I have brought this up to you all at previous county board member meetings, and previously we had all of our surrounding states in the Midwest that were in outbreak status. Illinois was not in outbreak status. We are now in outbreak status. Members of my team attended a national webinar to prepare for the possibility of that becoming a reality here in Boone County. We are targeting our homeless and transient populations, and also our MSM, or men who have sex with men population. For Domain 4, I have 2 flyers to hand out, and that is collaborate on community initiatives. The first one is that the Boone County Hunger Coalition will be hosting their 2nd Poverty Summit. There was one hosted in 2017, and the one for 2019 will be on April 16th. The registration information is at the bottom. If you all could do us a favor and push this information out to respective community partners and to your areas of work or other clubs or organizations that you all volunteer for, that would be fantastic. Currently, we have about 15 people registered, and we just opened registration only a few days ago. 2 years ago, we had over 80 community partners in attendance. And this will be a fantastic event. We will have a keynote speaker coming from the School of Social Work through the University of Illinois. The other event that I'd like to bring to everyone's attention is that the Belvidere Community School District 100 is hosting community movie showings. And this is part of the Boone County Health Department's District 100 partnership working on becoming a trauma-aware and then eventually a trauma-informed community. We had a kickoff event on February 22nd where we brought in Dr. Soglin from Chicago to discuss with us a little bit about how childhood trauma impacts health outcomes across the lifespan. And there are 2 movie showings, Thursday, March 21st, which is tomorrow at 6:30 at Belvidere High School, is a movie showing of the documentary Paper Tigers. And then on April 24th, there will be a movie showing of Resilience. These are free and open to the public, so I would encourage all of you, members of the public and your respective organizations, to attend if you are interested. Domain 5 is develop policies and procedures. And many of you remember that on March 11th, we put you through an hour-long training and preparation workshop, or TEPW. Ellen Genrich, my public information officer, and I, we appreciate all of your help. And it's quiz time. Does anybody remember what the top 5 capabilities were that we selected for the next 3 years? Anybody? You were all there for an hour. Anybody remember?
Come on, somebody must know one.
I copied off Jeff. I heard that.
Just when he doesn't want the microphone to work, it does.
So the five priority capabilities that you all helped us identify during the training and exercise planning workshop on March 11th that we will use going forward for our next 3-year cycle are as follows: medical countermeasures dispensing, responder safety and health, emergency operations coordination, volunteer management, and information sharing. I will make sure that you all have that via email so that if there's ever a pop quiz in the future, you are prepared. That probably wasn't terribly fair. You all did receive a copy of the training information through NIPARC, which I think is extremely helpful for county board members. If there are any questions about this material, please feel free to let me know. And then the only other point that I want to make is Domain 12, which is our governance domain. What we would consider to be a public health win in the state of Illinois is that the proposed Tobacco 21 legislation, which would raise the legal age for purchasing tobacco products in the state of Illinois from 18 up to 21, has passed both chambers of the Illinois legislature and is currently on the governor's desk. So that will be really good for our community in terms of the enforcement work that we do as far as reducing the number of our young members of our community who begin smoking at early ages. And that is all I have. Are there any questions?
Questions for Amanda? I'm always scared when Amanda comes up because I know she's going to ask questions that I don't know the answer to. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see, Board of Health, here we are, Regional Planning Council, Mr. Taranoni.
We had a regional planning council meeting in addition to the regular MPO meeting. And what I've started doing is just placing the agendas on your board docs so you can see what type of things are going on at those meetings. Really, it's a lot of perfunctory type resolutions related to transportation-related mandates and planning. And I believe, did you want to comment on the?
Yep. Okay. And I will take the other parts. Yesterday was the organizational meeting for the Northern Illinois Land Bank, and that is, of course, a part of R1. The 4 founding members for this land bank are Boone County, Belvidere, Winnebago County, and Rockford. And our first order of business yesterday was to admit or to vote in 3 additional members, and that is McChesney Park, Loves Park, and South Beloit. Freeport has also been given some grants, and we expect them to come into the same organization, but right now they aren't. The beauty of that is, if you think about that, it's a big region. We're taking everybody into account. The whole purpose of a land bank is to take blighted property and turn it into a productive use. Now, we already have something we do, delinquent tax program here in Boone County. What the difference is that this land bank, before it even makes a decision to acquire a property, they already have a plan on how they're going to dispose of it. So the strategy is that it's all linked together. The land bank was begun with a $225,000 grant. Of that $225,000, we can use $150,000 to buy properties, and that $150,000 is allocated for 1 to 4 unit residences. It can't be used for commercial property. Now, of course, there's other ways we can get property, commercial property or anything. People can donate it. We can buy it. There's any number of things like that. Let's see, the primary method for taking that property and converting it is a judicial deed, and I'm sure my colleague here to my left could talk more about it. But what that does essentially is it clears most of the liens and liabilities on a property, so it makes it more attractive to turn around and sell this or donate it or something like that. And to qualify for that, a property has to have had no taxes paid on it for 2 years, or 2 years of utility bills are delinquent. Now, a judicial deed is one of the most inexpensive ways to do it. The cost is estimated between $3,000 and $4,000. There's only one tiny downside. Throughout that process, if an owner pops up and says, wait a minute, that's still my property and I want it, then all bets are off. So you're taking a tad bit of a risk. Let's see, what else? And the trustees from Boone County and Belvidere are myself and John Wolf. And, of course, John Wolf and I have decided we're going to work together. And I think one of the things that, since you can't use that $150,000 for commercial property is really what they're calling the golden nuggets. And if we can get commercial property, that has a higher return on investment. If you're going to clear those liens and that sort of stuff from them, it's going to make, think of some of the properties we've looked at over the years. But that property cannot be purchased. We cannot use those funds. And, of course, any revenue that is made goes back into the pot to continue this process. Did I bore you all to death? Got questions? If you get too far in the weeds, I'm going to defer to somebody else. But, Marshall.
To either you or Trish, if this entity is going to be allowed to have certain standards waived, what happens if there is a possibility of environmental hazards beneath it or any Superfund areas? Is that the risk of this agency, or how does one deal with that? Because I know we've got an acre or two in Boone County that may fall into that category.
It's interesting, Marshall, because every single meeting I've been in, and Pam can agree with this, every single meeting I've been in, that question has been asked. So I'm going to tell you a whole bunch of several things. It was interesting because the attorney that the land bank uses is also the attorney, I think he's for Cook County, also land bank, I'm not sure. But anyhow, he pointed out that the process, we acquire something and then dispose of it, will all happen in the same day. It'll happen in the same day. It can be like an hour later. So, of course, to somebody like me that doesn't have a clue about this stuff, I think, wow, we're home free. Well, this morning as we're discussing it in Growth Dimensions Executive Committee, of course, another attorney sitting there said, no, if your name is on that title for 1 minute, you are liable. But I do believe, and we're in the weeds now, so I should shut up and not say anything, but somehow I think that this process eliminates that liability. I'll let, this isn't fair to Tricia because I did tip her off that I was going to, and if not, I'll find out the information, Marshall, and get back to you.
Yes, I'm not sure off the top of my head. There's also different ways that it can happen, as well as, you're not warranting the property, you're not, you've never basically held it really for a significant period of time to know those things. So there's different, I think, avenues to address those issues, but I'm not exactly sure how the land bank is going to handle those. Maybe Ken knows better.
Go ahead.
I can't answer that definitively, but I will say that the attorney they used to draft this is really an expert in land banks. So I do not believe they would have a system in place that exposes them. I just find that hard to believe.
And that being said, I apologize, I don't know the answer. I will get the answer and get it to everyone.
And it's also very, I believe that was the first meeting, is that correct, Sherry?
That's it was just our organizational meeting.
Correct. So we have bones of an agreement, and the board is going to set policies and procedures, and none of those steps have happened yet. So I'm sure these will issues will be addressed along the way.
Ken?
And also the land bank board selects property, I believe. You don't get into anything that you don't want to.
Well, and that's a good point, because, and I'll get to my most important point in just a couple minutes. Yes, no recommendations for property can come from anyone. I might as well do it right now. And we would solicit, John and I are going to figure out the best way to solicit from Boone County properties that anybody might know of that would fit this criteria. And any property that comes before the trustees, then the staff, our land bank coordinator, who actually comes to us from Peoria, he set up a land bank down there. That will be reviewed before it's taken, before they decide to go ahead and pursue it. The other thing to remember is that the 4 members of the land bank, this county board is one of them. And at any point in time, we have, anything that happens here has to be approved by this board. Well, then the second part is, because I happen to be on the trustee, we get another bite of the apple. So we get a couple of looks at this whole thing. So yes, those are as Tricia said, those are the bones of the process. But so if anybody has any idea of property that you feel might be eligible for this, get it to me or John. Marshall.
One of your earlier comments is that you and the Belvidere representative are going to be coordinating or working together. Mm-hmm. Would that suggest that there is going to be an opportunity for, if I can use the word, opposition between the 2 entities in Boone County versus more entities in Winnebago, or is there going to be a camaraderie amongst all of you, or is it indeed going to be a Boone County Belvidere team and another team on the other side of the county line?
Okay, that's an excellent question, and I didn't mean to lead anybody astray. The 4 trustees all have an equal vote. There is no, because it's based strictly on, the 4 entities, equal vote. So we are the smallest, of course. We still have an equal vote at the table. As far as collaborating, I didn't mean that in any structural way as far as the land bank is concerned. I meant it that we both live in Boone County and decided, if he finds out about a property and it happens to be in Boone County, we don't care where that information came from. So no, it's not setting up any of this kind of stuff. In fact, we're pretty sensitive about making sure that does not happen.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, now you all wake up and let's move on. Thank you. Let's see, I think we're up to a general consent item. Is that correct? Item 8.0. I'm looking for a motion to approve the general consent. Please. So moved. Well, I don't know who that was. All right, Brad Stark, motion made by Brad, second?
Second.
I think Marshall beat you, kiddo. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. By the way, thank you to all of you who have donated. I think they're on the screen behind me here. Appreciate that. All right, item 9.0, planning and zoning. Denny.
9.1 is a case with Ambrozewski replat. The applicant and owner is requesting approval of the replat of lots 54 and 55 of Candlewick Lake. The PIN numbers that are on here, it was approved by staff, PZB, and here we are.
A second.
Second. Motion made by Denny, seconded by Ray. Any discussion? Any questions? Ken, go ahead.
This is just a standard replat, 2 lots in Candlewick Lake Association. And the applicant is present tonight if there are any questions. But this passed committee without any issues.
Marshall?
For all of these that have been done over the years, we've probably cut the number of lots in that area by about half right now.
Quite a few. Are Mr. or Mrs. Ambroszewski here? And do you want to say anything, or do you want to just let us rock on? We will do that. Thank you. I think, any other questions? Roll call vote, please.
Sherry Bartelt,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Milner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward.
Yes.
Motion carries. Denny?
9.2 is a motion to approve ordinance 19-15, case 42-2018. The applicant, Boone County, is requesting a zoning text amendment pursuant to section 2.10 and section 2.10.1 and procedures and amendments of the Boone County zoning ordinance. The applicant is proposing to amend section 3.16.1 and section 4.7.2A to allow for earth materials extraction as a special use in the A1 Agricultural Preservation Area District when the use is the subject of a settlement agreement and consent order existing prior to 2006. Approved by staff, ZBA 4-0, PCB 4-0.
Second.
Motion made by Denny, seconded by Marshall. Any discussion? Kathy?
Yes, I have a couple things. I think my seatmate here, Marshall, and I were the only 2 people who were on the county board when this first came before us 15 years ago, something like that, anyway, 15 or 16 years ago. And during those 15 years, we have heard many different controversies and concerns, and we've also heard from people who are very satisfied that the county is the one who is operating this, not the city. As you probably know, they came to the city a couple months ago, and we're hoping the city would annex them as well. But as it turned out, now they're back before us, and this is the first time, I think, that I've heard the 2 groups really working closely together, so that's a very positive thing, and I think that's a good step in the right direction. There's just a couple things that I have a question about. Normally, whenever we have someone that comes in that wants a zoning change, it's the applicant who is requesting it. But in this case, it's the county who is doing it. So that's my one question. And my second question is, I've talked to many people over the last couple of days, reading them exactly what this says. And while it looks very tight, that only Plody would be allowed to have a quarry like this in the agricultural district, some of my lawyer friends thinks it might open the door to anybody else who might want to do this, and any other part of the county is ag. So can you answer those questions for one of you? Tricia, perhaps?
Tricia or Ken? Or both?
Sure. As for if this would open the door, I don't believe it would open the door. It's very tightly worded. That is the direction that the board wanted to go forward with when the issue arose that the current use was not allowed in A1 and that the change had not been made at the time of the settlement agreement. So there's no other property that I am aware of that would be subject to this. So I think that that's not going to be an issue going forward. And I'm sorry, I apologize. What was the first question as to why?
It's just why was Boone County the applicant rather than the person who really wants the change in zoning?
Well, Boone County is the applicant because we were part of that settlement agreement. And when we were part of the settlement agreement, we have contractual obligations to live up to that agreement. And part of that was to allow them to be in that area, that it would be zoned for them to be properly in there. And again, it should have been done at the time, but it was not. So in this case, felt that it was appropriate for the county to go forward because we're the ones that control that part of the zoning code. We believe that we probably should have fixed it the first time around, and we did not. So that is why the county went forward with that.
Ken, did you want to add anything?
I concur 100% with the state's attorney. This is a county matter with our code that should have been fixed years and years ago. It'd be patently unfair for any applicant to bear the cost and burden of fixing what is essentially our problem. So we discovered this in the course of analyzing their application, and this is the best solution that came up, and it remedies the problem.
Other question? Marshall?
Tricia, you used the word contractual agreement, and we have to do this. And so I think that this was, of the three options given to us, the most reasonable and efficient way of doing this. But that leads me down a different direction. And I think I've heard you say, along with other states' attorneys in the past have said, it's not wise or it's not the best thing to do to spot zone. But since we are under a contractual agreement, so to speak, our hands are tied. We have to, but are we opening ourselves up to any potential litigation because of spot zoning?
I don't believe it's illegal to spot zone. It's just not typically a wise or largely used planning tool that you don't typically want to do that. But in certain situations such as this, again, it seemed to be the best option. We didn't have to go with this option. We could have, the county board could have proposed possibly making this property I-1 or I-2, I forget, I think I-1, and or we could have opened it mining up to all of A1. So in light of those circumstances, we didn't have to necessarily go down this route, but that was the direction that the board gave us to, again, alleviate the problem that was a result of the settlement agreement back in 2005.
Other questions? Roll call, please.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Sherry Bartelt.
Yes.
Motion carries. Denny?
9.3 is a motion to approve ordinance 19-16, case 43-2018. The applicant, Beverly Materials LLC of Hoffman Estates, Illinois, is requesting a zoning text amendment pursuant to section 2.10 and section 2.10.1 of the Boone County zoning ordinance. The applicant is proposing to amend section 4.7.6 and section 4.7.7A to increase the term of an earth materials extraction special use permit from 5 years to 10 years. The applicant is also proposing to amend section 4.7.9I to change the hours of operation from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. or from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. to 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. and to allow for temporary extended hours to 10 p.m. with prior notification to the county.
Second.
Motion made by Denny, seconded by Marshall. Any discussion, questions? Ken, go ahead.
Just very briefly, as some comments, I want to thank the staff and our consultants and the residents out there, and especially Ms. Branson, and also very much the company representatives and Mr. Litke for the negotiations that occurred to make this document what it is today. And I truly believe it's the best compromise that could have been had. Not only does it allow this applicant to proceed and ask you permission to do this, but it also balances by providing some, I think, innovative ideas to protect neighboring residents. I do want to point out that tonight, as a result of conversation today between Ms. Branson, Mr. Littke, and myself, there's another document to be entered on the record, and these comments in this document were made at the ZBA hearing. So they further document the company's commitment to lessen or dampen maybe any potential impacts to neighboring residents. And also, I'd like to just remind everyone that there's a procedure in this document in the event that extended hours are requested. There's a procedure for the company to ask for that, for your county board chairman to acknowledge and approve. And if there are any ongoing issues with the operation, these extended hours can actually be revoked. So as far as the early morning hours, we had other comparable sites that we looked at operate in that manner, and the companies agreed to modify their operations in those early morning hours to lessen maybe any impacts to the neighbors. So regardless of how this board votes, I truly believe that this package is almost a best practice on how to balance the needs of a company doing their business enterprise and residents who perhaps live nearby.
Any other questions or comments? Marshall?
Based on the handouts that were provided prior to the opening of the meeting, one with multiple bullet points and one, I believe, penned by Mr. Lichty, maybe or maybe not, but are they all incorporated in the conditions as it came out of ZBA and PZB, or are they further conditions that's just a good faith agreement, or can you specify what I'm looking at here, Ken?
Well, you're looking at a letter from the company we received today. So we did get the email version on board docs, so let me find that.
March 20th, Ken. Today. I think it's the one right below it. Okay.
Yeah. So this is the email I received today. The content of the email is in this letter. So if you just take a look at the letter addressed to the county, second paragraph, some of the operational practices we have offered to do may be unusual for the county to require as a special condition. So I'm writing this letter to make a commitment to implement some practices to further mitigate noise and capture the spirit of our talks. So one thing we will do to the extent possible is direct trucks to be loaded in such a way that it minimizes the need for them to back up, thereby eliminating the sound of back alarms from the trucks. We plan to do this by having trucks enter stockpile areas in a loop fashion whenever possible. We are doing this in addition to installing visual back alarms on our loaders, as it would not be possible for us to require the trucks to have visual back alarms. So in addition to this practice, we will direct loader operators not to leave their transmission controls in reverse unless they are moving. This would prevent the sound of back alarms while the loader may be sitting still. So those several paragraphs try to address the potential noise type issues that you have in early morning operations.
You want to follow up, Marshall, and then we'll go to Denny?
Well, just the way I understood it at PZB, they cannot get away from having the backup alarms, and so I view this as a good faith effort, and nothing we ever could put a condition on. So I just wanted to make sure I'm understanding that correctly.
Denny?
The only part that worries me a little bit looking at how this is worded is in the reading that I gave, it talks about that the temporary hours may be extended with prior notification to the county. And the fact is that it has to have prior notification to the chairman, and he has to approve it. And I'm just not sure if that should be spelled out better than I see it written here.
Are you referring to the letter?
No, I'm
No.
referring to what I read from 9.3.
It didn't say specifically that the chairman.
It says with prior notification to the county, like
It says it.
Floaty just had to give us notification that they were going to be open longer, and it was automatic. And I think the part that says that the board chairman has to give them that permission. It looks like we got contradictions in the two different pieces we've got with that written that way.
Well, I think
Go ahead, Ken.
the motion just isn't as maybe as definitive in detail maybe as the actual ordinance, but the ordinance, Madam State's Attorney, carries the day, right?
Correct, the ordinance, and it spells out everything that we talked about in PZB, or I'm sorry, ZBA, actually both, that they do have to give prior written notice, and that they have to show documentation regarding the need, and it talks about that they cannot start unless they get written notification from the county, and that the zoning enforcement officer can revoke, or the chairman can revoke it based on evidence from the zoning administrator. So all those items are in the actual ordinance.
Okay, I guess I'm just worried that what we've read and what we're approving, it doesn't say that same thing. I just, yeah. I don't know.
Are you talking about the actual motion you just read?
Yeah. It says that the last sentence of 9.3 is that they will get it with prior notification to the county. That's all it says.
Well, I think the ordinance, I don't think you can put every single detail in the motion, otherwise we would read the entire ordinance every time for the motion. So I think the motion's sufficient, and it refers to the ordinance, and the ordinance would be what we're enacting.
Okay, I guess I just think maybe that needs to be a little longer in a lot of these cases, or else something pointing to, what it appears is that we're approving what I just read, and in fact, we're not. But I'm okay if everybody else is.
Well, couldn't that be added?
It could be added.
Couldn't that be amended to add
I
that?
think what the question is, the information is in the ordinance. It's under 4.7.9, under mining operation requirements. I think I should let you talk. No, that's fine. It's just not spelled out in the lengthy description of what the motion is.
Right.
So are you saying that in the future you want a longer description of the motion? Is that what we're saying?
I'm asking that as much as anything. I think, yeah, we probably, I guess I just worry about what appears to be conflict between what I read and what I read here.
I get it.
And I think if we can do things, maybe we need to be a little less specific in this, if that's the case, so that it does turn us straight to the entire ordinance.
I get your point, Denny. Let me ask the state's attorney, what, in my mind, when the motion is read, what trumps everything that follows it is the motion to approve ordinance and then fills in the number. Correct. So, I mean, we could just say, put a period after that, because then the substance of the motion is in the resolution.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of going both ends of the pendulum, but I get what you're saying, but I think, does it trump?
Well, your motion, you're approving the ordinance as laid out before you in 19.16, which is present on the screen here. And that, I just think typically in a motion, you don't lay out every single fact. You lay out, this is the ordinance that you're approving, and this is a summary of that ordinance. And I think that what you've read is a summary of what appears in 19-16. So I think it's sufficient. Clearly, in the future, if you want maybe more detailed, we can work on that as well. But I think that you are adopting, your motion is to approve 19.16, which is the ordinance.
Any other questions or comments? Marshall?
Madam Chairman, I would move to amend the motion. I would like to add on the very last sentence, after the words "with prior notification to the county," I would like to add "with prior notification to the county and approval by the chairman."
A motion made by Marshall, seconded by Denny, to add approval by the chairman and approval by the chairman after the word county in the description of the motion. Conversation, questions? Carl?
I'll add for discussion that I'll agree with the state's attorney. The motion is simply a summary, and that the ordinance does have these further details that you had just proposed. So this is just in a spirit of brevity that we don't have to list the entire ordinance to save time. So I would believe this motion would be redundant in that the extra full details are already included in the ordinance.
Marshall?
I can appreciate that, but if I go up about 5 or 6 sentences, it spells out clearly we're moving from 5 years to 10 years. And when it gets down to the bottom where the sentence is that I've amended, it clearly contradicts. And I would think it would be a moment of clarification. So that's why I proposed it.
Any other conversation on this motion? Brad?
In theory, we could just take this and we don't even have to have any of that there. It could just read motion to approve ordinance 19-16, case 43-2018. That could be the motion, right? So add in a bunch of verbiage, and we've already wasted 10 minutes talking about something where if anybody did their due diligence and read their packet. I've sat through too many of these meetings. I feel like I know this thing better than I know my kids' birthdays at this point.
Well, that's because you have 5 of them.
Well,
to remember.
I study hard. So at this point, I'd like to see us move on and get our work done tonight.
Any other conversation? Denny?
Well, I agree with all of that, and I was okay leaving it the way it was, I guess. I think it might be better if it was left more simple. I just worry in this litigious society we're in, if somebody comes here and hears this and reads this and then says, well, but now you're telling me we have to do something more. Judges follow a lot of different things, but at least if both places spell out that it must be asked for and given, it seems to me it does clarify that, and hopefully would save us a lot of time and a lot of money, possibly in court somewhere someday, by taking a few more minutes to discuss it tonight.
Anything else? There's a motion before us to add the words "and approved by the chair" at the end of the description on our agenda packet. It has been made by Marshall, seconded by Denny. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say aye.
Aye.
Motion fails. All right. Any other conversation on the motion to approve ordinance 19-16? Roll call, please.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Giesky,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Sherry Bartelt,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle.
Yes.
Motion carries. Denny?
9.4 is a motion to approve ordinance 19-17, case 44-2018. The applicant, Beverly Materials LLC of Hoffman Estates and Chicago Title Land Trust and Trust with a bunch of numbers there I'm not going to read, as landowners are requesting a special use permit renewal pursuant to Section 2.7, special uses in Section 3.16.1 of Table of Permitted Uses, and Section 4.7.7, renewal of special use permit of the Boone County zoning ordinance for earth materials extraction in A1 Agricultural Preservation Area District. The subject property is located at the points following on the sheet here.
Motion made by Denny, seconded by Marshall. Questions, conversation, comments? Ken, you go first, and then Marshall.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Go ahead, Ken.
I just want to clarify on item 16 regarding fencing. There was some discussion on this with the applicant, and there's no intent by the county staff to mandate fencing along the entire southern perimeter of this footprint, because that's very, very far away from the actual quarry operation. So I just want that clear, that we were not intending to do that.
Thank you. Marshall?
Ken was exceedingly gracious with all of his recognitions of all the parties involved in this whole process, and I want to agree with him 100%. There's been a group effort. I would like to call out one in particular, and that over the years, there may have been times where the county and Plody has had a cool relationship, and I think it has thawed substantially with the face of Mr. Lichty involved, and I hope you have a long employment with this particular organization.
I think he's paying for the celebration at the end. Oh, did I misspeak, John? I'm sorry. Any other conversation, comments, questions?
Yes, I have one.
Kathy, I'm
you
sorry.
You mentioned when there was going to be a time when we can come and take a look at that. April 9th, was that, sir?
Yes, we're offering another tour day for neighbors specifically, but obviously we'd be happy to send an invitation to one of the county boards. Wasn't able to get a good bad weather that they would offer.
Yeah, I know. Exactly.
So we'll put that out. We'll share that with county, so the county board members are aware of the special as well. We'll sign up dates. There are 8 a day. We pick so far April 9th. We will hold it every hour on the hour at 3, 4, 5 o'clock. If the demand increases, we'll add time slots and add dates if it becomes necessary.
Thank you. Anything else? Roll call, please, Julie.
Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Sherry Bartelt,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Ellingson. And Marshall is going to be so kind to take up the finance motions.
Madam Chairman, I would move to approve the claims with the understanding that Denny Ellingson abstains from voting on all claims presented by Conserve FS.
Looking for a second? Second. Motion made by Marshall, seconded by Kathy. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Sherry Bartelt,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske.
Yes. Marshall.
I would
Motion
move-
carries. I'm sorry. Marshall, go ahead.
I would move to approve ordinance 19-18, abating property tax for Series 2015A alternate bonds.
Second.
Motion made by Marshall, seconded by Jeff. Any questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Sherry Bartelt,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Carl Larson.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you very much, Marshall. I think we're over to Mr. Stark. Rhodes?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. We are 11-1, motion to approve low bid from Freedom Buildings Incorporated in the amount of $26,802 for the salt shed roof membrane replacement at the Highway Department.
Second.
Motion made by Brad, seconded by Carl. Any questions or comments? Marshall?
Not so much about the roof membrane, but it just brings to mind the idea of salt. And I assume we had a year that's broken every budget in the history of Boone County, or can you talk to me about how we're doing with salt in general?
I'd like to have Mr. Crone come up, and he can explain, too, a little bit with that number, because we got some paid by the insurance, and he's done a very swell job for us on this one.
This is Justin Crone, who is our highway engineer.
Did I just hear we're making money on salt?
We are getting insurance money for our roof replacement. We've already got a check for around $17,000 or $18,000. So, and that is anticipated to increase. Our bids were a little bit higher than what our original estimate was. So, that answer your question?
I think you asked about how much salt was used, too, didn't you? Or
this
how
was a general off-topic question. I apologize,
Sure.
But just salt comes to mind, and with the ice this winter, I just was hoping you'd give me some idea on how the budget's doing on salt, or is that
Sure.
anything we can discuss?
Yep. No, that's fine. I can answer that question. Generally, we budget, the county alone, we use about 3,000 ton for the county. All the other townships total use just over 3,000 tons. So we use about half of the salt that's placed in the rural Boone County area. Dollar-wise, last year it was about $50 a ton. This year it's $75 a ton. There's a few things that were impacting that. Illinois EPA has fined a lot of the salt suppliers based on their storage and their ability. So, you know, because of the EPA's fines to these vendors, we had less bids coming back with higher prices. So that drove our unit price per ton of salt from $50 to $75 a ton. There were some other things too with worker shortages or labor disagreements. So our vendor price was higher. And our usage was certainly higher this year than last year. Last year too, we spent last winter we spent 30. It's like low 30s, $30,000, $32,000 on salt. It actually was a $40,000 bid or $45,000 invoice, and we charged liquidated damages because they couldn't meet the contractual requirements. So last year's payment to our vendor was right around $32,000. This year, we haven't fully. So what I did this year was I brought our salt supply down so that when we replace the roof, we have until June 30th to fulfill our contract. So I wrote in the contract for this, the motion you have in front of you tonight, that the roof has to be completed by June 19th. So that gives us, a couple weeks to get the remaining salt in here. So I suspect, I guess, not to go too long into this story, but the end of this winter, when we replenish our supply, we should be around just under $100,000. We budget $125,000. We always budget higher. The last thing we want to do is not be able to risk public safety. So we want to always have plenty of salt on hand or budget on hand to meet our demands. There's been years in the past where salt has been $115 a ton. We're still at $75 a ton. I'm in the process of rebidding that again this year. I'm hoping that price will come back down to maybe $60 a ton. But so you've got a lot of fluctuations. So we do have a $125,000 budgeted dollar amount, but we've got fluctuations in obviously environment. So we can have a lot of snow or ice, and then we also have fluctuation in unit prices. So those two things, worst case scenario, we should still be able to meet our demands at $125,000 budget. But like I say, we're going to, by the time we replenish our supply for the season, we should still be under $100,000, so we'll be under our budgeted amount.
Go ahead, follow up.
Just to follow
and
up.
then Kathy, and then Ken.
But the reality of it is, we went from 30,000 last year to 100,000 this year, in part because our vendors were potentially doing something illegal, so they're passing the cost of their fines and fees on to us. Is that what I heard?
I don't know about illegal. I know that there was salt suppliers on the Illinois River that were dinged with fines, and I don't know the detail of those. So some vendors chose not to even bid on state contracts this year. So there was, certainly whenever the market is tightened by either government regulations or enforcement of those regulations, there's certainly we typically do see those passed on. So if there's higher regulations or if there's fines and tighter enforcement of those regulations, I would expect to see those. In this year, well, I shouldn't say this year, 2021, I'm anticipating there's going to be lock and dam closures along the river. So I'm trying to get things set up to handle that too, because we're going to be hit with those costs as well. If suppliers typically they bring the material up the Illinois River, and the Army Corps of Engineers has a program in 2021 to replace the lock and dams, and those are going to cause closures. I would anticipate that those suppliers or those vendors would pass those costs on to us if it's going to be an increased cost to get the material up to us. So yeah, there's a lot of different factors and different things in there. We try to anticipate those. Like I said, we're not going to be over budget. We'll be under budget, but we had multiple things that caused this year's to be higher than last year's.
Ken?
I simply want to put a plug in for our liability insurance pool that we're a member of with 22 other counties. They were able to come out and look at this and generate a payment to the county. So it's another example of how pooling can work for local government.
Good. Kathy, did you have something?
No.
Anything else from anybody? Let's see. Roll call, please.
Jessica Milner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Sherry Bartelt,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Giesky,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Brad?
11.2, motion to approve the low bid from AC McCartney for a utility tractor and batwing mower, the amount to be determined. And after the motion's seconded, I'd like Mr. Crone to explain the process used here.
Second.
Motion made by Brad Stark, seconded by Carl Larson. Any discussion, questions? Should we turn it over to you, Justin?
Sure. So on board docs, we've got a document that I sent in to try to explain this a little bit more. What we did this year was offer, typically we go out to bid for equipment, and usually we have a trade-in equipment that goes with that. This year, I did the trade-in as an optional trade-in, so that when I got our bid prices back on the trade-in, I sent that all out to all the local public agencies to have the option to purchase that equipment at trade-in values, to basically cut out the middleman, so we don't give it back to the vendor and then the vendor sells it back to the local agency. And we did in fact, actually within 24 hours, we had multiple agencies ask for to purchase that equipment at the trade-in value. So the Boone County Conservation District is now the owner of our tractor and our boom mower, which it worked out great for them. They were actually in the process of purchasing one, so it's going to save them money, and it's really not going to impact us. So I think it's a good cooperation between these agencies. So ultimately, the base bid for the tractor, this is a little bit higher horsepower tractor because we're not mowing as frequently as we have in the past to try to promote pollination as directed by a lot of the environmental groups because of the bee habitat and the pollination situation that we're faced across the nation. So by doing that, we get more saplings and more vegetation, thicker vegetation. So this time we did increase our horsepower on this tractor to handle that condition. So we do have a base bid, low base bid of $67,500, and actually, our lowest bidder made some errors on his bid, and that bid was thrown out. So the second lowest bid was A.C. McCartney for a Massey Ferguson tractor at $67,500. We do have other equipment that was not purchased by local agencies on that optional trade-in, so we are putting that in there with a $6,500 trade-in value that was bid, part of the bid. And so my recommendation to the board is to accept the low bid of $61,000 for A.C. McCartney for the Massey Ferguson tractor. That would be including the trade-in as well.
Thank you, Justin. Any questions for Justin? Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Marshall Newhouse.
Yep.
Bernard O'Malley.
Yes.
Brad Stark.
Yes.
Kathy Ward.
Yes.
Sherry Bartelt.
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle.
Yes.
Denny Ellingson.
Yes.
Sherry Gieske.
Yes.
Carl Larson.
Yes.
Ray Larson.
Aye.
Jessica Milner.
Yes.
Motion carries. Anything else, Mr. Stark?
That is all.
Okay, Health and Human Services, Jeff?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. 12.1, the motion to approve a high bid for a sale of the F-150 truck from the Animal Services. We received a bid today for an open bid, and it came in, the only one we saw, for $800 on this particular unit.
Second.
Motion made by Jeff, seconded by Kathy. Any comments, questions? We don't have to do a roll call, do we? We're selling it, not buying anything.
No, that's just.
Yes. You want money? Okay, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Bernard O'Malley.
Yes.
Brad Stark.
Yes.
Kathy Ward.
Yes.
Sherry Bartelt.
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle.
Yes.
Denny Ellingson.
Yes.
Sherry Gieske.
Yes.
Carl Larson.
Yes.
Ray Larson.
Aye.
Jessica Milner.
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing else.
Admin and legislative, Marshall, please.
Madam Chairman, I would move to approve ordinance 19-14, providing public transportation in Boone County.
Second.
Motion made by Marshall, seconded by Jeff. Any discussion? We don't have, this can be just a voice, right? Yeah. Just a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I would move to approve resolution 19-07, providing for downstate public transportation funds for Boone County.
Second.
Motion made by Marshall, seconded by Jeff. Any conversation, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Admin has no further motions at this time.
Thank you, Marshall. City County, Kathy?
Yes, upon a like vote of the Belvidere City Council to approve the quote from Wilson Consulting Services for professional consulting related to creating a request for proposals to replace the current phone system in the amount of $12,900.
Motion made by Kathy Ward,
Second.
second by Brad Stark. Any questions, comments?
You know, maybe I could just,
Go ahead, Kathy.
well, I can let Ken do it as well, but we have like 250 phones or something like that. That's why we want to make sure that we have someone who really knows what they're doing. And the old system is what, 15 or so years old, something like that?
Probably 12, I think.
12, okay. And every time I go to get my phone changed 2 years, it seems like is the extent of how long it's good. But, so anyway, we're going to have a consultant help with this.
Madam Chair.
Jeff?
Yeah, this was an effort that was put forth by the Sheriff's Department, and this is going to not just explore a regular phone system. This is going to explore options beyond a regular phone system. There are some things that I know we haven't looked at in the future. We're looking for a cloud. You're looking at internet. You're looking at our fiber. All those things are included in this type of review.
Thank you. Anything else? I think we can do all in favor. We can do a voice vote on this.
I think we need a vote.
Oh, it's money. Excuse me. Sorry. Getting ahead of myself here. Roll call, please.
Brad
That's
Stark.
all right.
Yes.
Kathy Ward.
Yes.
Sherry Bartelt,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Giesky,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Milner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, Kathy. Ray?
Nothing from the Public Safety Committee at this time.
Thank you. Let's see, special committee reports. Kathy, I think you're community building, correct?
Yes, we meet tomorrow night, but I would say that we are still trying to fill one position. We have 4 applicants, and the way it works is the townships all have to vote for that one person. Right now, we have kind of a close vote, so I'm not sure who that person is going to be, but it's been open for a year and a half, so hopefully we'll have a decision tomorrow night on that last position.
Thank you. UCCI, Ken?
A group of us will be attending their conference next Tuesday, Wednesday in Springfield.
Thank you. Kathy, I think you're up again for
I am, and
Community
we
Action
meet
Agency.
next Thursday, yes, next Thursday, a week from tomorrow. In Rockford.
911 Board?
I would say discussion generally centered on some new ideas for retaining employees in the 911 center. They seem to run in and run out, and it'd be nice to be able to retain them.
Tough job. I think it's got to be a real tough job. All right, let's see. Any other committees? Am I missing any others?
I have the VA met. I gave everyone.
Oh, that's right.
I gave everyone a little printout of it. They're giving out about an average of $11,000 in assistance to the veterans of the county. They revamped their payout schedule, and things are going very well for them right now. They're very well balanced. They're giving out about half of the money. They're about 50% right now. They're trying to get up to. They're trying to get that up to around 60 if they can of the actual total cost. They're getting the turnaround for the disability claims is now around 3 months, which is really fast. They're getting very proficient. But all the appeals are taking 4 to 5 years, it seems.
Thank you, Bernie. Anyone else? Okay, we need to hear from each of you chairs of committees updates. I'll start with you, Ray.
The next Public Safety Committee meeting will be Monday, April 8th at 6 p.m. in this room.
Denny?
I take it the next PZB meeting will be April 3rd, Wednesday, in this room at 6 o'clock.
Marshall?
Admin, Monday, April 8th, 6:45, this room.
Kathy?
City County on April 10th at 6 o'clock in this room.
Finance will be April 9th at 6 p.m. in this room. Jeff?
Health and Human Services, April 10th. 6:45, thank you.
Brad?
Roads would be April 2nd, 6 o'clock. Oh, no, that's election day, so we're at the Highway Department. Highway Department at 6.
With refreshments, Justin? Okay.
Oh, it goes without saying.
Oh, sure goes without saying. All right, I think that's it. Do we have any unfinished business, Mr. Charnoni?
No.
Any new business?
Nope.
Any monkey
wait,
business?
Bernie.
Oh, whoops, Bernie, I'm sorry.
I have one thing. I've just been working on trying to revamp our meeting schedule for starting in May, if we can, to try to go to 5 nights from 7 nights of meetings. The thought was to go the first week to have 2 meetings on a Monday and 2 meetings on a Wednesday the first week. The second week to have a Tuesday meeting of 2 meetings and then 1 meeting on Wednesday. The thought was to put public safety and roads on a Monday, and then on a Wednesday the first week to do health and human services, followed by city county, and then on the following week a Tuesday to do admin and finance on a Tuesday, and then on Wednesday to do PCV, and then our board meeting on the third week. This saves about $2,500 of just expense to county board members in gas reimbursement. I mean, some people live 30 miles away on trip. And it just would help our administration with their time commitment here, because they have other meetings to go to besides our own. And it would just make it easier for us to get us all together and actually hear things a little bit more if we're so inclined. But I'd like to see this start in May if it's possible.
Marshall, if memory serves me correct, I thought this was a topic that admin was also taking upon itself. Don't we chat about this occasionally?
We have chatted, and we have come up with, I should say we, under the recommendation of Bernie for some ideas on bundling meetings. We're in that now, and I believe, Ken, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we're on a kind of like a 3 or 4 month trial period on these. Whether we move to something different or continue on with this in that May time frame, I think that's where Bernie's leading right now.
Denny and then Ken. Denny?
Okay, I just was going to say that I'd like to hear from administration to make sure we got these dates going the right way. I know that the PZB meeting, as you talked about, has usually been the first week of the month, and I thought that had to do with maybe fitting other timelines in that in, that I didn't know if maybe that needed to be the first one and the other 2 meetings you're talking about the second one, but I just thought maybe administration ought to give us a recommendation of what they need for their record keeping work that they do.
Ken?
Your chairman at the retreat did say that he wants to take this on, and we did receive the written ideas from Dr. O'Malley that has been given to your chairman. So I think the intent is at admin to just get this out there and let's get something done for the rest of the year. So that's all in process.
Marshall?
I think, Bernie, you just heard we'll have an agenda item here next month at admin to talk this over.
Right. And I think, if I might make a comment, I know it's all about us, but what I worry about is making sure that the public knows that there is some stability in when the meetings are. So I'm hoping that we will keep that uppermost in our mind as we're doing this kind of a discussion, because I think most people sort of, the ones that pay attention already know sort of when these meetings are happening. So I hope we'll keep that in our minds as we deliberate. Thank you, Bernie. Anything else? Let's see. Informational items. You want to talk about those at all? Ken?
The county clerk's monthly receipts, so thank you very much. And also, I received a very interesting email from someone that we met on our Washington, D.C. Excursion last fall. And this individual invited us to sit in on a White House briefing about the opioid crisis. So I listened to part of that yesterday, and they were kind enough to reduce all of this to a fact sheet, which I put out on Board Docs. So I thought that was very interesting that they are doing this and certainly remembered us from that excursion. So
good, thank you. Anything else? We now need to go into an executive session. I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel, collective bargaining, and a review of exec minutes. Gee, you're so eager. Brad made the motion, seconded by? Jeff, or the other way?
Okay.
We need a roll call, but first of all, I'd like to thank all of you for attending. I hope you'll come back for another board meeting.
More than enough board meetings for a lifetime.